Hey! Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video, and today we're going to be doing my essential Batman comic list. Now, for those of you out there that don't know what my essential videos are, basically what I do is I take a comic book character or a comic book series and I make a list of essential must-reads for that particular comic. Now, the reason why I do this is because not everyone out there wants to read everything there is about a particular comic. Whether it be because of time constraints or money, or maybe they just don't want to put in that much effort. Sometimes people want to just focus on the essentials, the must-reads for a particular comic. Now, I've done a lot of essential videos before. Batman, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, so on and so forth. But I have to constantly update and redo my essential videos. The reason for this is because new content is always brought out by the publisher. So I need to either add stories into my essential list or even take stories out. So that's what I'm doing today, is doing a new essential Batman list. However, I thought I'd change things up a little. Instead of doing one essential Batman list, I thought might as well make a video where I do 3 essential Batman lists. Hear me out. See, I found that not everyone wants to read the core material for Batman. Sometimes people want to focus on a particular villain, or writer, or time frame, or feeling to that comic book. So, what I decided to do is make 3 different essential lists hitting different areas that people would want to focus on. Now, it's impossible to hit every single area and do a list for every single different aspect of Batman or any other comic that people would ask for. So I thought I'd narrow it down to 3 choices. The first choice is going to be the core essential Batman list. This is going to be the list that I give you beforehand. It's going to be the list that has the must-reads for Batman. If you want to be a hardcore Batman fan like me and dedicate a lot to him, this is the list you want to go to. The good, the bad, the ugly, but the essentials for Batman. The second list is going to be the classic Batman list. The classic Batman list is going to be stories that a Batman reader can just pick up, enjoy, and put down. You don't need to know a lot about Batman's continuity to enjoy these. And the great thing is they're all good. The last list would be the modern, updated, current Batman list. The modern, current Batman list is going to be a list of Batman stories for someone that wants to focus on the Batman material right now. Sometimes people don't want to read the past 75 years of Batman. They just want to look at what's happening with Batman today. So I have a list for you guys that want to read just the current Batman stuff. So with that said, let's jump into the Batman essential list. Let's start things off first with the classic Batman list. Now, the classic Batman list is going to be a list of stories that anyone can pick up and anyone can enjoy. Whether you're an old Batman fan, a new Batman fan, a casual one, or a comic book enthusiast in general, you can pick up these stories, not need to know anything about Batman, his continuity, or his history, and enjoy them. They're standalone stories. You don't need to read anything before the story or after the story to enjoy them. You can just pick them up, read them, and put them down. And the great thing is all of them are good. So starting things off, if you enjoyed the Golden Age or Silver Age of Batman, what I would recommend to you is a series of comics, would be the Chronicle series for Batman and the Showcase Presents series of Batman. Now, for Golden Age fans, the Chronicle series is currently a 10-volume series that deals with the start of Batman and the Golden Age of Batman. So if you love the Golden Age comics and you want to read Batman, the Chronicle series is definitely a place to go. Now, if you're a fan of Silver Age, and there are people out there that love the Silver Age, and you want some classic Batman stories, I would recommend the Showcase Presents series, which is currently a 4-volume series. Now, these stories take place in the Silver Age during the big Batmania that was at the time. And the great thing about these stories, along with the Chronicle series, is all of them are standalone stories. You can read one issue and put the book down and not read it for like a month, and pick it up again and read another issue. They're all good stories for people that enjoy these particular areas and genre of Batman. So the Showcase Presents and the Chronicle series, a definite must-get for those comic book enthusiasts out there that love Batman. Moving on, to the more modern Batman stories, Batman Year One. Batman Year One is an origin story done by Frank Miller. Now, I'm not the biggest Frank Miller fan out there. I kind of think his current writing is a little crazy. However, Frank Miller did pull out some good shit back in the 80s, and Batman Year One is an example of this. This is a street-level crime story that deals with the origin of Batman, him becoming the Dark Knight itself. This is a great story, a 4-issue series that anyone will enjoy. The great thing is, it's the origin of Batman, so it's not like you need to know anything about Batman going into this. So Batman Year One, definitely a must-get for those people that want some classic Batman stories. Moving on would be Batman, The Long Halloween. Considered by many the Year 2 of Batman, after removing Year 2 from continuity, Batman The Long Halloween is a crime story that deals with many different aspects of Batman's life. A lot of his villains show up, a lot of his supporting characters show up, and it is a great mystery that will keep you guessing. Even when you think you know who it is, it turns out to be someone completely different. You don't need to know much about Batman going into this. A lot of his villains show up, but there are a lot of villains that I think anyone would know. It's a great story, and it is fun and enjoyable. And the great thing is you don't need to know anything about Batman going into it. It's classic, and it's good. Batman, The Long Halloween. Moving on would be Batman, The Killing Joke. Now, Batman, The Killing Joke is a classic story, a confrontation with the Joker. This is for all you Joker fans out there. It is a story that deals with the origin, a possible origin of the Joker, and also a showdown between Batman that will push each other to the limit. There's a lot of tragedy in this, and in the end, no one really wins. It's a great Joker story and a great Batman story. So if you want a classic Batman Joker story, I highly recommend picking up The Killing Joke. It's fun, enjoyable, and a great read for anyone. Moving on. Do you like Ra's al Ghul? I like Ra's al Ghul. He's one of my favorite Batman villains. Well, if that's the case, then I recommend Batman, Tales of the Demon. Batman Tales of the Demon is a collection of stories done by Dennis O'Neil with Neil Adams as the artist. And these stories deal with the first stories, the first confrontation with the demon head himself, Ra's al Ghul. You don't need to know anything about Batman going into this. Ra's al Ghul is introduced, so he will be a new villain to some, but these are all the stories that are done during the Bronze Age with Ra's al Ghul. They're fun, they're enjoyable, and Ra's al Ghul is a completely different Batman villain from all the others, because he is a global villain. He's a huge threat, and, well, he has all the money and power that Bruce Wayne has, if not more. So if you're a fan of Ra's al Ghul, or you want to get into the character, Tales of the Demon is a great place to start. You don't need to know anything about Batman going into this, and seeing it's introducing a new character, you will get a little bit of fun and enjoyment in finding this new discovery with Tales of the Demon. So Tales of the Demon, definitely a classic Batman choice for all you out there. Moving on would be Batman, Strange Apparitions. Batman Strange Apparitions is a collection of Batman stories done during the Bronze Age, and while they're all individual stories, they all connect together in some way, shape, or form. These stories deal with a lot of villains in Batman's life. Joker, Penguin, Deadshot, so on and so forth. And in the end, there is an overall story arc. But the great thing about this is these are fun, classic Batman stories. Have you ever read the animated series or watched the animated series? A lot of the episodes that are done in there were actually originally told here. Remember that episode where the Joker made those laughing fish? It was originally collected in here. So if you want some classic Batman stories done during the Bronze Age when the Batman became the dark detective again, the tragic hero, well, then Strange Apparitions is definitely a place that you may want to go. So Batman Strange Apparitions, a classic Batman story. Next would be a Batman story that actually might need a little bit of information to go into, but not too much. Mostly just knowing general, basic information of Batman. And that would be Batman Nightfall, a 3-volume Batman series, which has Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. Now, Nightfall is personally my favorite Batman story, but I'm not pulling it on this list because it's my favorite Batman story. I'm putting it on the list because it's a great classic Batman story that is a great gateway drug to anyone who wants to read Batman. All of his villains show up in this. All of his supporting characters show up in this. A lot of his sidekicks show up in this. And just in general, it's great writing. It is some of the best material that was done during the 90s. And it's Batman going up against a villain that is quite possibly the most dangerous villain he's ever fought. Bane. A lot of people have the misconception of Bane being just a complete mindless brute. No, that's Doomsday. Bane is an intellectual, smart, cunning, strategic mastermind who has all the brawn to back it up. This is a great collection of Batman stories, and if you wanted just an in-general story, Batman Nightfall is definitely something that you want to get. The only thing you really need to know going into this is who Azrael is. But other than that, someone could pick this up, enjoy it, and put it down, and have a good time. So Batman Nightfall, definitely a choice for the classic Batman list. Moving on, next would be Batman Hush. Now, some people out there don't like Hush. Actually, some people just downright hate Hush. However, I think Hush is a great story, and it's a great story for someone that wants just a casual Batman read. This is a story that has all of Batman's villains in it, and it also has some of his supporting characters, with a guest appearance from Superman and Lois Lane. This story introduces a new villain named Hush, a villain that can attack Batman on a personal level, as well as a physical and crime-fighting level. Hush is a dangerous enemy, and all the stuff that's done in here is fantastic. The ending can be a little bit predictable on who Hush is, but the love story between Catwoman and Batman, very nicely done. The art, beautiful, and everyone in here is in character. So if you want a classic Batman story that's a little bit more modern, a little bit more up to date, Batman Hush is definitely a place to go. One of the best Batman stories out there for a classic Batman read. Moving on, we're getting towards the end of the Batman classic list, would be Paul Dini's Batman Detective in Death in the City. Detective, Death in the City. There we go. These are individual one-shot stories set in the current Batman continuity after Infinite Crisis. All these stories can be read individually and then put down, and you don't need to know anything about Batman going into it. And the great thing is that some of these stories are just so fantastic. For example, there's a story where Robin gets captured by Joker and they go on a little joyride, and it's absolutely hilarious and ridiculously enjoyable. These are the essential for a classic Batman list, because these are stories that you can just pick up, read, and put down, issue at a time. So if you want some great Batman stories, Batman Detective and Death in the City are definitely the place to go. Next would be Batman Private Case Book. Done by Paul Dini and done in the same fashion, these are individual one-shot stories that are for Batman. You may need to know a few things going into this, but not really that much. These are stories that you can pick up, read, enjoy, and put down. And just like the previous stories, these are all good and all enjoyable. Batman Private Case Book, there's not much more that needs to be said other than, wow, these are good. And lastly on the list, for someone that wants to read classic Batman stories with the new Batman, yes, there is a new Batman and a new Robin, Batman Streets of Gotham Leviathan. Now, Batman Streets of Gotham Leviathan is done by Paul Dini, along with Chris Yost and a few other writers and some artists. And this collection basically tells street-level, crime-level stories for the new Batman. The individual stories they can just pick up and enjoy, and some of these stories are really, really good. I recommend Leviathan over Hush Money, because Hush Money is more of a story that's tied into continuity. This story, you can just pick up and enjoy. All you have to know is there's a new Batman. So with that said, that is the classic Batman list. Let's move on to the next one. Next is going to be the current modern Batman list. Now this list is out there for all the people that want to read just the current Batman stuff. Not everyone wants to read the 70 plus years of Batman. Sometimes people want to focus on what's happening right now. And seeing that's the case, you're going to have to know what's happening right now, because there's a lot of stuff going down in Batman currently. There's two Batmans out there. There's Bruce Wayne the original and Dick Grayson the first Robin, also known as Nightwing. In addition to that, there's multiple different writers on Batman. Some of them have been on there for a long time, like Grant Morrison and Paul Dini. who have a lot to their run on Batman that you really should read certain stories to understand. There's also writers like Tony Daniel who have been doing Batman currently, and you really should know what his stuff is compared to all the others. So with that said, let's just jump into this list. First, it's going to be a comic that was on the previous list, and that would be Batman Hush. The reason why I'm putting this on the current Batman list is because it does a few things. One is it introduces Hush, a villain that is very predominant in the current Batman reading. And you're better off knowing about Hush's origins and about who the character is and how he got introduced into Batman to understand really his grudge against Batman and Gotham and everything else. Second is that it kind of reintroduces Jason Todd into the Batman continuity. Lastly, it also sets the tone for Batman and Catwoman's relationship from this point on, which is very important because a lot happens to them from this point on. So Batman Hush, something that you should consider picking up if you want to read the current Batman material, particularly the Paul Dini stuff. Moving on would be Batman Under the Hood Volume 1 and 2. Now, I was debating on whether or not to put this on the list because that would mean you would have to know about Jason Todd and read Death in the Family. However, going into this, all you need to know is that the second Robin, Jason Todd, was killed and he was brought back to life. And this story deals with the return of Jason Todd. This is on here because Jason Todd also is the predominant villain for Batman in the current reading, particularly for the new Batman, Dick Grayson. So Batman Under the Hood Volume 1 and 2. Both are actually good Batman stories. Well, they all collect into one Batman story. A little long, a little dragged out, but it does add and is important to your current Batman reading. Next would be the start of Grant Morrison's run on Batman, Batman and Son. Now, Batman and Son alone is not that good of a Batman story. However, in the grand scheme of things, it works well with Grant Morrison's writing. Grant Morrison does long, overall, big stories. And sometimes the small pieces of the story don't look important, but when put into the story, they turn out to be very essential. And Batman and Son is that. Alone is not that good. But in order to understand Grant Morrison's writing, which can often be confusing to some people, Batman and Son is essential. So Batman and Son, a must-read for your current Batman material. Continuing Grant Morrison's work on Batman would be Batman and the Black Glove. Now, Batman and the Black Glove sets down many of the clues, scenes, and tones, along with characters, to Grant Morrison's writing in Batman. So, if you really want to understand Grant Morrison's writing of Batman, then you should definitely pick up Batman and the Black Glove. It's essential to the current Batman stuff and essential to the Grant Morrison stuff going on right now. So Batman and the Black Glove, definitely a must-get for your current Batman reading. Moving on would be Paul Dini's Batman Heart of Hush. Now, Heart of Hush continues the Hush story, and it really sets up what happens to Hush and what is going to happen to the image of Bruce Wayne after the final crisis. It also is a big turning point for Batman and Catwoman's relationship, because something big happens here that some Batman fans never thought was going to happen in the modern Batman continuity. So Batman Heart of Hush is a great story, well worth reading, and essential for your current Batman reading. Moving on would be continuing Grant Morrison writing on Batman with Tony Daniel as the artist, Batman R.I.P. Now, Batman R.I.P. is going to be one of the climaxes with Batman and the Black Gloves confrontations. Batman and Dr. Hurt, and Batman and Joker, and Batman and, well, basically everyone. It's considered Batman's darkest hour, where he is brought to the limit, where he is pushed beyond the break of the breaking point. Yes, the break of the breaking point. It's a great story that just shows you that no matter what predicament Batman's put in, he's a problem solver, and he can figure his way out of it. It's a great story and really important and a must-read for you Batman fans out there that want to understand Grant Morrison's writing on Batman. So Batman R.I.P., a must-have for your current Batman reading. Moving on would be, now this is debatable on whether or not you should pick it up, but there is Batman in Final Crisis. I almost said Batman Final Crisis. No. Batman is in Final Crisis. Something big happens to Batman in Final Crisis. Well, it's not essential to your core Batman reading. It does affect Batman as a comic book series, because from this point on, Bruce Wayne stops being Batman for a while, and instead Dick Grayson becomes Batman. I recommend picking up Final Crisis purely for Final Crisis as a story itself, which is a good story. It ends horribly, but it's a good story. If you're picking it up purely for what happens to Batman, I don't recommend it. If you really want to know what happens to Batman, just look it up on Wikipedia or DC Wiki or whatever. But if you want to, it's a good story, and it does affect Batman. And it does tie into the Return of Bruce Wayne story arc that just ended. So, Final Crisis. Something that you might want to consider picking up, but I recommend picking it up mostly if you want to read Final Crisis itself. Next on the list would be Batman Battle for the Cowl. Batman is gone, or at least Bruce Wayne is, but Batman the hero needs to live on. A battle between the sons of Batman, Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, and Jason Todd, all fighting for control of the Cowl. Who will win? Well, you basically already know because I kind of spoiled it for you. But this is important because this sets up who the new Batman and Robin will be. So Batman, Battle for the Cowl, definitely a must-get for your current Batman reading. Next would be Judd Winnick's Batman, Long Shadows. Now, with all the stuff going on with Batman, it would actually be nice to focus on the new Batman as a character. And Long Shadow deals with the new Batman's transition into becoming Batman. Dick Grayson is becoming the Dark Knight. In the start of this, you see Dick Grayson, but at the end of this, you'll see Batman, which is very important. You see the character transition from Dick Grayson pretending to be Batman to Dick Grayson being Batman. Batman Long Shadows, a great story for you out there that love Dick Grayson as Batman, and important for your essential current Batman reading. Next would be Batman Streets of Gotham Hush Money. Now this story is important mainly for Hush himself. This deals with Hush, what happened to him after Hush, and what's happening to him currently, and how Dick Grayson is dealing with, well, Hush's unique predicament that he put himself in. It's a good story, written by Paul Dini, and it continues Paul Dini's work on Hush and also on Batman. It's definitely a must-read for your essential current Batman reading. Next would be Batman, Life After Death. Now, some people actually don't like this story, but I really enjoyed this story. It's Dick Grayson kind of being put in his darkest hour, dealing with some of the most dangerous Batman villains. Black Mask, Hugo Strange, the Reaper, so on and so forth. And everything is crumbling down around him. This is a great story, and it also deals with what happens to Black Mask and who Black Mask is, this new Black Mask. So, if you want a great Batman story and add to your current Batman reading, pick up Life After Death. It's definitely a must-have for the current Batman material. Coming up to the last stuff on the current Batman list would be Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin series. Currently, there's only 2 volumes out right now, but a 3rd volume is going to come out soon. In addition to that, there's also going to be The Return of Bruce Wayne, which is something I would recommend if it was physically here. But that doesn't come out for another 3 or 4 weeks. Sorry. But Batman and Robin. This is the series that Grant Morrison does to continue his writing of Batman. This isn't focused mainly on Batman himself, but rather on the dynamic duo. In addition to that, this also kind of continues his writing on Bruce Wayne. Seeing that Bruce Wayne is not even present until the 16th issue, he's still pretty much the main story. A lot of things that happen in Bruce Wayne, The Return of Bruce Wayne, or Batman, The Return of Bruce Wayne, and Batman R.I.P., all the way back to Batman and Son, cultivate up into here. So, if you want to continue your reading with Grant Morrison with a little bit more of a grounded Batman reading, Batman and Son is definitely a series that you need to pick up. So that is the current Batman essential list. Like I said, The Return of Bruce Wayne is going to be coming out in trade soon, so I do recommend that also. But that's definitely the stuff that you should read to enjoy the current Batman material. With that said, let's jump into the big one, the essential Batman list. Next is the big one, the essential Batman list. This is a list for all you out there that really want to commit themselves to the Dark Knight and be as hardcore in Batman as I am. If that's possible, because I'm pretty hardcore in Batman. But this is really for the people that really want to get into Batman as a comic book character. There's a lot of great stories in this. There's some not so great stories, but all of them are important to your Batman reading. You'll also see some of the stories from the previous two essential lists show up in here. Now, there are some Batman stories here that are very expensive. There's about 2 or 3 of them. I will point out which ones are the expensive ones. The reason why I put them on there is because they're just really good stories and must read. If you can't get your hands on them at first, don't worry. They're not absolutely essential to your Batman reading to understand future Batman stories, but they're still really good Batman stories. You can get them online, on Amazon, eBay, or you can go to a Comic-Con, where Comic-Cons are probably your best bet. Things are usually sold there and sold for much cheaper than what they are. I'll also give you a general price range on what the price is for those comics. So I'll point out to you which ones are the expensive ones. Starting things off is, of course, Batman Year One. Origin story for Batman, great story. It's a must-have for all people out there that want to get into the Dark Knight. So Batman Year One, definitely a must-get. Moving on, and as you can see I'm moving quickly for time, would be Batman Shaman, the start of the Legend of the Dark Knight series. Batman Shaman is a story that takes place during Batman Year One and intertwines with it. It can be an expensive story. I've seen it in a few comic stores, so it's not incredibly rare compared to the other ones. If you buy it online, it's going to range from $20 to $30, maybe a little bit more expensive. But I recommend looking in stores for it. It's a good story and definitely fun to read next to Batman Year One. So Batman Shaman. Continuing with the Legend of the Dark Knight series would be Batman Prey. Now this is definitely a rare Batman story, which the cheapest one I've seen online was like $35. You can find it in stores, but it is hard to find. I've seen 1 or 2 at Comic-Con, so Batman Prey is a really fun story. It deals with a very cool Batman villain, Dr. Hugo Strange. So pick it up if you can find it. It's a great read. Batman Prey. Moving on would be Batman, The Long Halloween. Now, Batman Long Halloween, for the reasons I stated before, great story, great mystery. It includes many of Batman's villains, and it just has a great cast of characters. Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb outdo themselves in this must-have for a Batman fan. So Batman, The Long Halloween. Moving on would be Batman Strange Apparitions. Again, for the reasons why I told you, classic Batman stories, and the stories that are just fun to read. This is easy to get your hands on, and it's definitely one that should be on the essential Batman list. Classic Batman stories. Must get for a Batman fan. So, Strange Apparition. Again, previously on one of the other lists would be Batman, The Killing Joke. Same reasons I stated beforehand. Great confrontation with the Joker and a great Batman Joker story. But also in this, some major stuff happens, particularly to Barbara Gordon, that you should read in order to understand some of the later Batman stories. So Batman, The Killing Joke. Moving on would be Batman, Death in the Family. Now, Death in the Family isn't particularly an overwhelmingly good story. Actually, it's mediocre at best. But this is the death of the second Robin, and it sets the tone for many of the Batman stories from this point on. It also is important in knowing who Jason Todd is and how his death has affected Batman. See, Jason Todd does eventually come back. So Batman, Death in the Family. Definitely a must-have for your essential Batman reading. Moving on would be A Lonely Place of Dying. Now, A Lonely Place of Dying introduces the third Robin, Tim Drake. It's a great story, and it also introduces a great character to the Batman mythos. It used to be kind of hard to get your hands on, but I've seen it at a few comic stores, and it actually went down in price online. So, it's not that rare anymore. It's definitely a must-get if you enjoy Batman, if you enjoy Tim Drake, and you enjoy the Robin mythos. This is definitely a must-get. It's central to your Batman reading. So Batman, A Lonely Place of Dying. Next would be Batman, Sword of Azrael. Now this is just a good story, but this is also important for the transition into what I call the Chuck Dixon era, where Chuck Dixon does a lot of writing for Batman. Obviously there's some other writers there, but Chuck Dixon does a lot of writing for Batman during the 90s, and this kind of sets up a lot of stuff from Nightfall onward. This also introduces a cool character to the Batman mythos, Azrael, the Angel of Death. So, definitely a must-read for reading the Batman during the 90s. So, Sword of Azrael. definitely try to pick it up if you can get your hands on it. It's expensive online, but I've seen quite a few of them at stores. So, it's going to be varied whether you can get them. Next would be Batman Nightfall, the 3-volume Batman series. What can I say? Great Batman story, has all of his cast in there, supporting characters, sidekick, and villains alike. Introduces a badass villain known as Bane, and this shows you the struggle of Batman. This is his breaking point, truly his darkest hour, because, see, Batman breaks not because of his back, but because of his will and his body and his mind and his spirit. Everything put together is the breaking of the bat. Great story, great action, just overall great. Batman Nightfall, a must-have for Batman fans. Now, this is a rare Batman story and can be hard to get your hands on. It's not essential to get, but it is something I do recommend reading because it's kind of cool to read this now, and also with the current Batman reading. But Batman Prodigal. After Batman recovers from his broken back, he needs to take a little bit more time off, and he gives the Batman mantle temporarily to Dick Grayson. This is kind of where Batman gets out of the dark, moody stage with Jason Todd's death and moves on with his life. This also is a healing process for him and Dick Grayson. You also get to see Dick Grayson and Tim Drake's relationship really start to grow and foster into a brotherhood and a brothership and just siblings. So, Batman Prodigal. It can be expensive. You can get it for about $40 online, but try to find it at Comic-Con. It's a great story. If you can't get it right away, don't fret, but it is definitely something that you should consider getting. Next would be Batman Contagion. Now, Batman Contagion is just, again, Batman dealing with a disastrous situation. It's an okay story, but it's definitely recommended reading for the next story on the list, which would be Batman Legacy. Batman Legacy is probably pound for pound the hardest Batman story to get your hands on. It goes for $70-something online. However, there is a chance that you could find it at Comic-Con or find it at a comic store. I got mine at my comic store. I lucked out. My comic store is awesome for getting rare comics and pricing them for the normal price, which would be $17. This is a great story. Batman going up against some of his most powerful villains, Ra's al Ghul and Bane, in a rematch of the century between the two. It is fun, it is enjoyable. The problem is, it's mad expensive. It's not incredibly essential to read this for later Batman works, but it is recommended. So if you can find it, good. Read it, enjoy it, it's fun. But if you can't get your hands on it right away, don't worry. But it's still a badass Batman story. You should definitely read Contagion going into this. So next would be Batman, Cataclysm in No Man's Land. Now, Cataclysm in No Man's Land is basically a 6-volume series of Batman, which deals with what happens with Gotham when it gets hit with an earthquake and everything basically goes to hell. It's a huge series, as you can see. But it is definitely something that someone should consider picking up. It's fun, it's enjoyable, and I recommend if you pick this up, if you're just starting Batman, pick up a trade a week. One trade a week. After about 6 weeks, you'll have the whole collection, and then you can read it all at once. It's an enjoyable series, it's fun, and it's definitely something essential to Batman, because Cataclysm kind of lingers for a long time over the head of the Dark Knight. So, Cataclysm in No Man's Land, definitely important for Batman, and also for the DC Universe, because this is where Lex Luthor gets his foothold in for the presidency. Next is Batman Hush. This was in the previous 2 lists, it's going to be in this list. This is important for the same reasons I said beforehand. Catwoman, Hush, Jason Todd, this overall is a great story. Some of it's predictable, but the writing is really nice in this, and Jeff Loeb really shows his craft for Batman and Hush. So definitely something that you should consider picking up for an essential Batman reading. Next would be Batman War Drums, which is the prelude to War Games. Now, War Games is something that shook up Batman, and it really shows the tone of Batman before the Infinite Crisis. Paranoid and schizophrenic and crazy. Absolutely crazy. This is also where we see the 4th Robin come in, the female, Stephanie Brown. You see a lot of tragedy in this, and in the end, Dark Knight may not actually win. We also see Black Mask become a super powerhouse when it comes down to being a villain. War Games, an important part to the Batman mythos, and also important to your Batman reading. So with that said, moving on to Batman Under the Hood Volume 1 and 2. Again, like I said before, reintroduces Jason Todd, makes him a villain, and it's a very emotional and good story. There's a few parts of it that I would have changed, like maybe streamlined it a bit better, and how Jason Todd came back to life. But on a whole, it's a great series of stories and important for your Batman reading. Moving on would be Batman Face the Face. This is the 1 year later story for Batman, and this helps set the tone for Batman being a little lighthearted and a little less paranoid. It's a fun story too, because it also deals with Two-Face's return. Now, Two-Face never really left. He was always there, but he had his face kind of fixed up via plastic surgery. However, the individual Two-Face inside Harvey Dent starts to consume him from the inside, and the return of one of the best Batman villains, and probably, arguably, my favorite, is in this. So Batman Face to Face, a great story for your Batman reading. Moving on, a lot of these you saw in the previous Batman list, so I'm just going to run through them real quickly. Batman and Son, essential for your Grant Morrison Batman reading, along with Batman and the Black Glove. Again, essential for your current Batman reading for Grant Morrison. Important to understand what's going on with Batman in his universe, because Grant Morrison has a unique writing style, and he does a lot of hints throughout his Batman run, so it's good to read everything. Heart of Hush. This overall fantastic Batman story, and also continues Hush's story as a character. This also deals with Batman's love for Catwoman and really elevates it to a new level. Moving on would be Batman R.I.P. Batman R.I.P. is just Batman's darkest hour in Grant Morrison's eye. This is also where you see Batman succeed in his darkest hour. Great story, and definitely recommended for your Grant Morrison Batman reading. Moving on, Batman Battle for Kal introduces a new Batman into the Batman mythos, Dick Grayson as Batman. Pretty good story too, and Tony Daniel does a very good job with the art and story, showcasing that he can do both. Long Shadows, for the reasons I said beforehand, you see the transition of Dick Grayson pretending to be Batman into Dick Grayson being Batman. Important for your Batman reading. Next would be Streets of Gotham, Hush Money. Now, Streets of Gotham, Hush Money continues his Hush story, but it's also a good story in that you really see Dick Grayson have to deal with Hush as a character, because Dick Grayson never really had to deal with Hush as a character. Great story, recommend picking it up. And the last 3 on the list would be Life After Death. This deals with Dick Grayson going up against the new Black Mask. Fantastic story, and Tony Daniel, again, pulling out some great shit. Some people don't like this, I don't know why, but it really is good, and definitely recommend picking up. And lastly is Grant Morrison's work on Batman and Robin. Now, there's a 3rd volume coming out, and like I said, the return of Bruce Wayne is going to be coming out within the next few weeks, so I recommend getting those. But this continues Grant Morrison's work on Batman, so it's definitely recommended to pick it up. So Volume 2 are out, Volume 1 and 2, Volume 3 coming out soon. So that is my 3 essential Batman lists. I hope those are helpful for you guys. Leave feedback. Let me know if this is a good formula to use. I'm going to do my Superman review soon. So if you like this formula, I will do this for my Superman essential comic book list. So thank you for watching, and again, I hope this helped you guys out. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.